Today comes 10 clusters of harsh truths most people learn only after years are already gone. No motivation, no comfort. Explanations for why everything was done correctly and progress still feels wrong. Failure is not the issue. Outdated rules are. That realization lands because it names a frustration carried through the 20s and 30s. School finished, work done, politeness maintained, late nights tolerated, mistakes avoided. On paper, life looks fine. Inside, something feels off. Not poor, not stupid, not lazy. Just tired in a way rest does not fix. Momentum feels borrowed, not owned. Progress moves slower than expected. Others appear settled while life feels out of sync, like missing instructions else received. That confusion is brutal, because nothing obvious can be fought. It cannot be quit. It cannot be hustled away. It hums constantly. The most dangerous thought is hidden. If this continues, 10 more years could disappear. Real examples exist everywhere. A capable coworker, reliable and calm, never fired, never promoted, slowly realizing dependability was not value. A cautious friend saved carefully, avoided risk, and woke at 40 inside a life that made sense, but felt small. Nothing collapsed. That is the danger. Drift does not explode. Before moving into the harsh truths, this framework must be clear, because without it, everything that follows sounds unfair, pessimistic, or extreme. This lens comes from Niccolo Machiavelli, remembered less for comfort and more for accuracy. Machiavelli did not ask whether someone was good, moral, or well-intentioned. The questions were simpler and colder. Who rises, who falls, and why? Power was studied like gravity, without emotion, apology, or hope that reality would behave differently. Effort never guaranteed protection. Sincerity never stopped consequences. Alignment did. Alignment between behavior and environment. Alignment between timing and position. Alignment between perception and reality. This is why this video avoids reassurance. Inspiration fades. Structure remains. Motivation feels good briefly and fails quietly later. The Machiavellian frame exists to reduce long-term cost, not inflate short-term emotion. History proves this pattern repeatedly. Talented people stagnate while average operators advance. Hard workers stay invisible while strategic ones change rooms. The difference is rarely intelligence or effort. The difference is understanding rules already in motion. Rules exist whether acknowledged or ignored. Ignoring them never removes them. It only raises the eventual price. This video functions as a map, not a sermon. Maps do not promise comfort. These next sections break life down into 10 clusters of harsh truths that quietly shape outcomes whether they are acknowledged or not. Each truth represents a force already at work, influencing direction, momentum, and limits long before results become visible. Together, they form a map of how people actually rise, stall, or drift, not in theory, but in real adult life, where time, energy, and opportunity compound without mercy. Cluster 1 exposes an uncomfortable reality. Exhaustion is rarely caused by work itself. It is created by proximity to the wrong people. Long hours can be survived. Pressure can be managed. What drains energy is constant exposure to tension, subtle disrespect, and unpredictable behavior. Toxic people rarely look dangerous at first. They often appear as talented teammates who destabilize rooms, friends who normalize chaos, or partners who promise change without evidence. The trap is believing endurance equals strength. Endurance in the wrong environment is slow self-erosion. A familiar pattern appears in offices everywhere. A capable employee stays inside a dysfunctional team because the role looks respectable and the paycheck feels safe. Meetings feel heavy. Trust thins. Sleep worsens. Confidence erodes quietly. Nothing explodes, yet something leaks daily. The same pattern shows up in personal circles. Friendships survive on history instead of alignment. Conversations loop around the same complaints. Growth feels awkward. Leaving feels cruel. Staying feels familiar. Familiarity hardens into a cage. This leads to the most ignored truth. No one rescues another adult from patterns refusing confrontation. Support can exist. Sacrifice is optional. Remaining nearby out of hope usually delays necessary separation. Over time, tolerance reshapes identity. Standards lower, language adapts, chaos becomes normal. Ceilings form without being seen. People nearby shape ambition, pace, and risk tolerance long before goals are written down. Environment decides what feels possible, acceptable, or unrealistic. That is why progress often accelerates immediately after one relationship ends or one room is exited. Nothing internal changes. The field changes. Relief arrives quietly as clarity. Energy returns without force. Decisions sharpen. Boundaries stop feeling cruel and start functioning as maintenance. Clean environments create momentum without motivation. This cluster matters because life direction is rarely blocked by effort. It is capped by proximity. Who remains close defines limits more than talent ever will. Who is tolerated sets the ceiling. This truth clarifies why exits feel lighter than victories, and why alignment restores energy faster than rest in adulthood, where stakes are higher and time no longer forgives hesitation or extended periods of misplaced loyalty over time. Cluster 2 confronts a fear that quietly keeps lives small. The fear of being watched, judged, evaluated, and remembered more than reality ever supports. Most hesitation in adulthood does not come from lack of ability. It comes from imagined scrutiny. This is known as the spotlight effect, the belief that attention follows every move, every mistake, every awkward moment. In reality, attention is scarce. Everyone is consumed by personal pressure, private problems, unpaid bills, unfinished plans, and internal noise. The room does not revolve around one person. It never has. Yet decisions are delayed, opportunities avoided, and expression muted because the mind assumes an audience that does not exist. A familiar example appears in everyday work. A professional hesitates to speak in meetings, worrying about sounding uninformed, while colleagues are silently rehearsing lunch plans or thinking about deadlines. Another example shows up in personal choices. A career pivot is postponed for months because of imagined judgment, only for the change to happen quietly and be forgotten almost immediately. The irony is cruel. The decision that causes 6 months of anxiety often occupies 6 minutes of anyone else's attention. Life does not pause to analyze individual courage. It keeps moving. This misunderstanding shrinks ambition over time. Risk feels heavier than it is. Visibility feels dangerous when it is mostly ignored. The result is self-censorship disguised as caution. Growth slows not because ability is missing, but because perception is distorted. Attention feels like a spotlight when it is closer to background noise. Once this truth settles, something loosens. Choices stop needing approval. Expression stops waiting for permission. Momentum increases without additional effort. The room remains unchanged, but internal resistance fades. That is the hidden cost of imagined judgment. It steals years quietly. Freedom begins with realizing how little attention actually exists. Most people are too busy surviving their own lives to monitor anyone else's. That realization is not depressing. It is liberating. It removes invisible chains that never needed to be there. No one is watching as closely as assumed. That truth alone restores movement, voice, and willingness to act without apology in a world that rarely notices hesitation, but always rewards motion over silence. Cluster 3 explains a pattern that confuses good people for years. The world does not respond to intention. It responds to signals. Kindness, honesty, and effort feel like they should carry weight. Yet weight is not assigned emotionally. It is assigned structurally. Respect is not a moral reward. It is a reaction to position, timing, and perceived leverage. That is why being nice does not automatically produce authority. It produces comfort, sometimes appreciation, but rarely influence. This becomes visible in everyday situations. Two people say the same sentence in the same meeting. One voice shifts the room. The other disappears into the air. The words were identical. The response was not. The difference was not intelligence or tone. It was position. One speaker carried perceived authority through role, track record, or alignment with power. The other carried none, so the signal landed softly and vanished. This is not cruelty. It is pattern. Another example shows up in personal boundaries. A request framed politely without consequence is often ignored. The same request framed from a position of scarcity or value is respected instantly. The content did not change. The signal did. Many people stay confused here because morality is mistaken for leverage. Effort is offered where structure is required. Frustration grows because fairness is expected instead of feedback being read. Over time, this misunderstanding creates resentment. It feels like being unseen despite doing everything right. The truth underneath is uncomfortable but clarifying. The environment is not evaluating character. It is scanning for cues. Confidence without position sounds loud. Position without confidence still carries gravity. That gravity shapes reactions before meaning is processed. This explains why promotions, influence, and authority often move sideways instead of upward. Alignment beats sincerity. Signals move faster than explanations. Once this truth becomes visible, behavior shifts naturally. Energy stops being spent on proving goodness. Attention moves toward building placement, credibility, and timing. Respect stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling mechanical. Not cold. Predictable. That predictability is power because it allows deliberate movement instead of emotional confusion. The room does not ask who deserves influence. It responds to who already appears to have it. That is not how fairness should work. It is how reality operates. Signals move rooms. Intentions don't. Cluster 4 dismantles a comforting myth. The world does not pay for promise, intelligence, or future capability. It pays for evidence. Resumes, credentials, and polished narratives explain intention, but they rarely change outcomes. What moves opportunities is a body of work that exists without explanation. Talent feels rare when young, yet adulthood reveals how common ability actually is. Smart people are everywhere. Skilled people are everywhere. Persistence is not. That scarcity is why consistency outperforms brilliance over time. A simple pattern appears across industries. Two candidates apply for the same role. One lists achievements and potential. The other shows projects, results, and scars from execution. The second candidate feels safer because proof removes imagination from the equation. Another example appears in creative work. A designer talks about ideas for years, while a peer quietly publishes imperfect work every week. Attention follows output, not intention. Momentum chooses the person who ships. Action creates clarity in ways thinking never does. Plans feel intelligent, but movement produces feedback. Feedback sharpens direction. Direction builds leverage. Waiting for certainty delays all three. This is why many capable people stall. Preparation becomes a hiding place. Potential becomes an excuse. The fear underneath is exposure. Proof invites judgment. Potential postpones it. Yet postponement carries its own cost. Time compounds invisibly while nothing tangible accumulates. Progress begins the moment that something real exists to react to. Proof does not need confidence. It speaks on its own. Receipts change conversations because they remove debate. No persuasion is required when results are visible. This truth reframes effort. Energy spent polishing narratives produces little return. Energy spent building small, concrete outcomes compounds quickly. One finished project outweighs 10 unrealized plans. One consistent habit outpaces bursts of intensity. Over time, bodies of work create identity, reputation, and options without announcement. That is how doors open quietly. The world does not see potential. It sees receipts. Those receipts become currency, protection, and leverage in environments that reward what can be shown, repeated, and trusted, rather than what sounds impressive in theory alone. Reliability grows when proof accumulates consistently under pressure over years without excuses. Cluster 5 exposes why progress favors movement over precision. Life does not wait for certainty. It responds to action. Most long-term regret is not built from mistakes. It is built from hesitation. Inaction stretches quietly, month after month, until opportunity expires without drama. A familiar pattern appears everywhere. A professional delays applying for roles until feeling fully ready, while another applies early, adjusts fast, and advances despite imperfections. The first feels safe. The second gains ground. Safety feels intelligent in the moment, yet motion produces options that thinking never unlocks. Asking accelerates momentum faster than preparation ever will. Requests feel risky because rejection feels personal, but silence guarantees stagnation. A simple example repeats constantly. Someone asks for advice, feedback, or an introduction, and receives unexpected help, while someone else waits to improve quietly and remains unseen. Doors open through interaction, not isolation. Progress also favors volume over perfection. Shots on goal matter more than selecting the perfect project. Outcomes emerge through repetition. Experience accumulates through attempts, not theories. This explains why careers often accelerate suddenly after years of scattered effort. Nothing magical happened. Enough attempts finally connected. Perfectionism disguises fear as standards. It sounds disciplined while protecting comfort. Motion feels messy, visible, and exposed. Yet exposure creates feedback. Feedback refines direction. Direction sharpens decisions. Momentum compounds without asking permission. This cluster matters because certainty is seductive and expensive. It promises safety while quietly charging time. Movement feels reckless to cautious minds, but in practice, it is strategic. Even wrong steps clarify faster than flawless planning. Action converts anxiety into information. Information reduces fear. Over time, confidence becomes a byproduct, not a prerequisite. Progress belongs to those willing to look unpolished early in exchange for relevance later. Life does not reward certainty because certainty rarely exists. It rewards motion because motion produces reality. Every path becomes clearer after movement begins, never before. If discomfort is rising while hearing this, that signal matters. Comment the truth in this cluster that feels most uncomfortable, because discomfort often points directly at the door hesitation has been guarding for too long already right now. Cluster 6 reveals the most dangerous outcome in adult life, and it is not failure. Failure hurts sharply and briefly. Mediocrity damages quietly and continuously. Fear of making mistakes often disguises itself as responsibility, patience, or realism. Yet its real function is paralysis. Movement stops not because options are gone, but because risk feels heavier than stagnation. A pattern appears everywhere. Someone stays in a role that is tolerable, pays the bills, and avoids stress, but offers no growth, no stretch, no future leverage. The job is not terrible. That is the trap. Comfort without progress becomes a slow ceiling. Another example shows up in relationships that are stable but lifeless. No conflict, no passion, no momentum. Leaving feels dramatic. Staying feels reasonable. Years pass quietly. This is false stability. It looks safe from the outside, while eroding ambition, curiosity, and self-respect from within. Mediocrity rarely announces itself as a problem. It presents as being responsible, grateful, or realistic. Days become predictable. Weeks blend together. Energy flattens. Dreams shrink to fit available effort instead of expanding with potential. Unlike failure, mediocrity offers no clear moment to react. There is no collapse to rebuild from. There is only gradual numbness. Fear of being wrong keeps decisions frozen. Avoiding embarrassment becomes more important than seeking growth. Over time, not choosing becomes a choice with consequences. Skills plateau. Networks stagnate. Identity hardens around what is familiar instead of what is possible. This is why mediocrity kills quietly. It trades short-term comfort for long-term regret. Failure teaches quickly. Mediocrity teaches nothing. It delays feedback until options are limited. That delay is expensive. The most painful realization does not arrive with chaos. It arrives calmly, often years later, with the awareness that nothing is technically wrong, yet nothing meaningful moved forward. This truth reframes risk. Failure is not the enemy. Stagnation is. A failed attempt closes one door. A mediocre decade closes many without warning. Progress requires exposure to discomfort. Growth demands friction. Avoiding both creates a life that feels safe but small. This cluster matters because many lives stall not from dramatic mistakes, but from quiet decisions to remain acceptable instead of becoming capable of more. Failure hurts once. Mediocrity erodes daily. Cluster 7 confronts a lie deeply embedded in modern ambition. Burnout is not evidence of drive. It is evidence of mismanagement. The body keeps score long before the mind admits there is a problem. Consistency builds capacity. Intensity burns it down. Short bursts of extreme effort look impressive, yet they rarely survive time. Sustainable progress comes from repeatable rhythms that do not require heroics. A common example appears in work culture. Someone pushes through late nights, skips rest, ignores signals, and earns praise for dedication until productivity collapses without warning. Focus disappears. Motivation fades. Health frays. The cost arrives all at once. Another example shows up in fitness and personal goals. Extreme routines start strong and vanish quickly. Modest routines last for years and quietly transform outcomes. The difference is not discipline. It is design. Sleep functions as leverage, not luxury. Cognitive sharpness, emotional regulation, and decision quality depend on it. Cutting sleep to gain hours feels productive, yet those hours are repaid later through mistakes, irritability, and slowed thinking. The trade is never worth it. Breaks function the same way. Rest is not an interruption of work. It is part of work. Professionals understand this instinctively. Amateurs grind until something breaks. Recovery restores capacity. Without it, effort compounds in the wrong direction. Burnout often hides behind noble language. Hustle, sacrifice, commitment. These words disguise imbalance as virtue. Over time, the body responds honestly, even when language lies. Fatigue accumulates. Stress becomes baseline. Creativity narrows. Small problems feel overwhelming. None of this signals weakness. It signals unsustainable systems. The body does not negotiate. It reports. Ignoring those reports does not create strength. It delays collapse. This truth matters because ambition without structure self-destructs. Long-term growth requires energy management, not energy extraction. Consistency outperforms intensity because it respects biological limits. Sleep sharpens leverage. Breaks preserve momentum. When systems support the body, effort multiplies instead of draining. Burnout feels heroic until it empties capacity. Strength looks quieter. It appears as steady output, clear thinking, and resilience over time. Those traits rarely trend online, yet they decide outcomes. Burnout is not proof of commitment. It is proof that something essential is being ignored. Burnout is not strength. It is mismanagement. Cluster 8 exposes a force that never announces itself, yet decides most outcomes. Time does not shout. Time charges interest. Money behaves the same way. Small decisions compound quietly while attention drifts elsewhere. Saving early feels pointless because results appear invisible at first. That invisibility fools many people into delaying action. A few dollars set aside seems insignificant compared to immediate needs. Yet delay multiplies cost faster than effort can recover. The same pattern appears with spending. Living beneath means looks boring, even restrictive, but it creates optionality. Optionality reduces pressure. Pressure distorts judgment. A familiar example appears in everyday life. Two people earn similar incomes. One upgrades lifestyle quickly, filling expenses to match earnings. The other keeps overhead low. Years later, one feels trapped by obligations, while the other can change jobs, relocate, or take risks without panic. Nothing dramatic caused the difference. Compounding did the work silently. Luck also plays a role, but luck is misunderstood. Luck is not random magic. Luck is exposure multiplied by effort over time. Work buys tickets. Consistency increases draws. Waiting reduces chances. Someone who saves, invests, and stays active in opportunities meets luck more often than someone waiting for perfect conditions. This applies beyond money. Skills compound. Networks compound. Reputation compounds. Delay carries cost because time cannot be paused. The danger lies in assuming later will be easier. Later is usually more expensive. Bills grow. Responsibilities stack. Flexibility shrinks. Small sacrifices avoided early become large sacrifices forced later. This is why discipline feels heavier in the future than it ever did at the beginning. Time forgives nothing. It only tallies. Mistakes can be corrected. Delay compounds. A wrong decision teaches quickly. No decision teaches nothing while opportunity erodes. Many people believe financial stress arrives suddenly. It does not. It builds quietly through years of postponement and inflated lifestyle. Relief arrives the same way, quietly, through repeated restraint and early action. This truth reframes patience. Waiting without action is not patience. It is drift. Patience with structure compounds. Patience without structure decays. Understanding this removes drama from money and time. Progress does not require brilliance. It requires alignment with compounding forces. Small moves repeated beat, heroic moves delayed. The earlier alignment begins, the lighter the future feels. That is the quiet advantage rarely discussed. Time does not reward intention. It invoices behavior. Time punishes delay more than mistakes. Cluster 9 reveals why effort alone often plateaus, while trajectory depends on environment. Status is not vanity. It is context, and context determines speed. Being the most capable person in a room feels flattering, yet it often signals stagnation. Growth slows when there is no pressure to rise. Rooms teach behavior, standards, and ambition long before skills are tested. Reputation forms quietly inside those rooms. It accumulates through consistency, reliability, and visible contribution. Yet, it fractures quickly through misalignment or carelessness. A single misstep in the wrong environment can outweigh years of solid work. This fragility is not unfair. It is structural. Reputation is memory, and memory spreads faster in tight circles. Another pattern appears in social and professional circles. Surroundings dictate pace. When everyone nearby moves slowly, caution feels normal. When everyone nearby stretches, speed becomes standard. This is why changing rooms often changes results without any internal transformation. A professional struggling for years in one environment can accelerate rapidly after entering a higher caliber network. The skills were already present. The expectations changed. Positive sum thinking amplifies this effect. Rooms built on competition exhaust participants. Rooms built on collaboration multiply outcomes. Helping others win creates allies. Allies extend reach, information, and opportunity faster than solo effort ever could. Zero-sum environments reward defense. Positive-sum environments reward contribution. Trajectory shifts accordingly. Status grows not from dominance, but from placement within systems that recycle trust and opportunity. That is why promotions, influence, and access often move sideways instead of upward. Lateral moves into stronger rooms outperform vertical struggle inside weak ones. Many people misread this and double down on effort instead of repositioning. Effort increases fatigue. Repositioning increases leverage. The environment does not measure intention. It reacts to signals, reputation, and alignment. Over time, rooms shape identity. Language changes. Risk tolerance adjusts. Ambition recalibrates. The ceiling rises or lowers accordingly. This is not elitism. It is gravity. Placement determines force. The fastest way to change trajectory is not working harder, but entering spaces where standards are higher and momentum already exists. That shift feels uncomfortable because it exposes gaps. That discomfort is data. It signals growth potential. Comfort often signals containment. This cluster clarifies why some people advance effortlessly while others grind endlessly. Rooms shape outcomes faster than effort. Recognizing the room matters more than perfecting the self. Awareness creates choice. Remaining unaware locks trajectory in place. Consider the current room-shaping decisions, pace, and expectations. Which room defines the future right now? Comment the room that feels familiar, even if that answer is uncomfortable. Cluster 10 reframes the destination most people chase without questioning. The end game is not success, status, or applause. It is alignment. Happiness is not a target to pursue directly. It is a byproduct that appears when actions, values, and relationships stop fighting each other. Chasing happiness often creates pressure, comparison, and disappointment because happiness cannot be forced. Meaning can. Meaning comes from building, contributing, and choosing direction deliberately. This shift explains why many outwardly successful lives feel hollow. Achievement without alignment creates noise, not fulfillment. Another quiet truth follows naturally. Asking more and speaking less accelerates understanding. Questions create connection. Listening creates trust. In conversations, curiosity signals confidence more than performance ever will. People who talk less and ask better questions learn faster, build stronger relationships, and avoid unnecessary conflict. This matters because alignment depends on accurate information, not assumptions. Reaching out also plays a critical role. Awkwardness prevents more meaningful connections than rejection ever does. Messages left unsent, calls avoided, and apologies delayed quietly weaken social fabric over time. Reaching out feels uncomfortable in the moment, yet it strengthens bonds that compound for decades. Relationships behave like investments. Neglect depreciates them. Attention grows them. Love compounds faster than money because it multiplies energy instead of consuming it. Support systems reduce stress, increase resilience, and expand perspective during hard seasons. No amount of personal achievement replaces trusted connection. This truth becomes clearer with time. At the end, resumes do not comfort. Titles do not protect. People do. Alignment means building a life where effort supports values, relationships support growth, and progress feels coherent instead of scattered. Success without alignment creates burnout. Alignment without spectacle creates peace. This cluster matters because it corrects the scoreboard. Metrics imposed by culture rarely match what sustains life long-term. Direction matters more than speed. Connection matters more than recognition. Presence matters more than performance. What is built matters less than who is built alongside. When alignment exists, happiness appears quietly, without being chased, and stays longer because it rests on foundations that do not collapse under pressure. What you build matters less than who you build it with. This ending is not about doing everything or fixing life overnight. It is about choosing one truth and letting it change direction quietly. 40 truths sound overwhelming, yet transformation rarely comes from volume. It comes from precision. One insight applied consistently outperforms 10 understood intellectually and ignored emotionally. Life does not require dramatic exits, public reinvention, or loud declarations. Direction shifts happen silently, through small decisions repeated daily. A boundary held, a room exited, a habit changed, a conversation initiated. These moves rarely look impressive in the moment, yet they alter trajectory before anyone notices. That is the advantage. Loud change attracts resistance. Quiet alignment attracts momentum. Many people wait for certainty, confidence, or permission before acting. None of those arrive first. Action creates them. The cost of delay is invisible at first and devastating later. Confusion bleeds slowly. It drains energy, clarity, and time without obvious pain. Clarity hurts once because it forces confrontation. It demands responsibility. It removes comforting stories. That sting fades quickly. The relief lasts much longer. A decade can disappear through hesitation. A decade can also be saved through one honest adjustment made now. No one needs to agree. No one needs to approve. Results will explain everything later. This video was never about motivation. It was about orientation. Seeing rules early prevents expensive lessons later. Understanding alignment reduces friction. Awareness restores choice. The future is not decided by talent alone, effort alone, or intention alone. It is decided by repeated alignment with reality. Choose one truth from this list and act on it this week, not perfectly, just deliberately. Comment the truth that will be applied immediately, because naming action creates commitment. Subscribe to continue learning the rules before time charges interest, because clarity delivered early saves years that effort alone cannot recover. Clarity hurts once. Confusion bleeds for years.